do horrible things to people's names, and I will be in there somewhere. But all right, off to you, Jeff, to get us going. Oh, sorry. Was there any announcements or anything first, Deb, that we need to do?
Yeah, so for December, we will be having our usual call, and I'm really excited. We'll be having someone from NIH come talk about the Unified Medical Language System, which is kind of a standardized metadata for medical images. And specifically, he's going to gear it towards like how they formed it, which I think will complement last month's talk about lab notebooks very well. So I'm super excited about that. But then in December, we're also having a joint call, kind of like an end of the year party. It will be kind of like our attempt at the last one, but we can do it in Zoom this time, which should work a lot better. But like some of the rooms we'll have is a supercomputing follow-up, a room about getting more involved in the CARC tracks, a room about getting more involved in the CARC working groups, either the existing ones or maybe forming a new one. So that is December 10th. Yes, 10th. So we haven't set out the official announcement for that one yet. That'll probably be coming next month. But there was a save the date earlier, so hopefully everyone got that. All right, that's all the announcements I had. So away to the panel.
Okay, now away to Jeff.
So are we just doing a quick introduction, or should I bring up the points, the what's going well, what's not going well, or are we just going to go around once and then get to that?
We'll do both. So do a brief introduction and your short, kickoff of what you want to share a few minutes with everyone to help seed our conversation for later.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Jeff Boucher. I work at UCSF. I work at the library in a group called the Data Science Initiative. Though I'm actually a software developer, so I also do a lot of those business apps, lots of shuffling of data, between various systems. I teach a lot of the intro workshops on Python, SQL, and Unix. Some of them are designed for people who've never written a line of code before, and some are designed for, maybe more intermediate to advanced people. There's a big emphasis on text data these days, especially with clinical notes at UCSF. So a lot of that. And I do a lot of consulting with people. My academic background is actually in industrial engineering. So I worked in industry for a while. And while I do a little bit of math, actually, this has been consistent between industry and UCSF. Most of what researchers want from me is data pipeline building. One thing I've discovered is UCSF scientists are already pretty good at science, so they don't really need my advice on that. But there's just so much getting your data into a CSV file so you can analyze it. There's a lot of programming. So I do a lot of that. And that most of the workshops that I do are designed around that. Even if they're machine learning or something like that, it's 95% focused on getting the data ready, populating a model, and reading the results. So moving on to what's working and not working with online teaching. A lot of these are kind of, very few of these are unambiguously good or bad. They're just challenges and things that have come up. I have noticed a huge spike in people signing up for workshops, probably because it's a little easier to get to an online workshop. And also I think people maybe want something to do, maybe work on building some new job skills during the closure. So that's been a kind of a good thing, but it's been a challenge. Another nice thing is UCSF we started this a long time ago, so it was a coincidence, but we got a site-wide license for LinkedIn Learning, which has been very helpful for people. I have found that consulting over Zoom works really well because sharing screens back and forth works, with a little bit of a drawback that sometimes there's data that I just don't want them sending it to me or sharing it online or anything like that. So that could be a little bit challenging, but it hasn't been too bad. And then one really good thing is I used to try to, prior to the closure, I would try really hard to record workshops, and I couldn't stand them, how I was sounded, what it looked like. So I never did it. And I just kept on putting away and said, I'll get to it later. And I think the closure made it so urgent to do it that I was allowed to lower the bar for myself and get over it. And so I've gotten a lot better at speaking into a blank screen and just going ahead and recording and posting it and not worrying too much about, you know, whether I like it or not. And it's been really good. I've gotten a lot more out, and, you know, a lot of things you can't stand them. And then a week later, you realize that was fine. You know, it was okay. So as the challenges, there's some stuff that's really been lost. A lot of it is in those casual offline conversation that happen when people get together. I've noticed that people who are in the workshops don't have the offline conversations that they used to. And in particular, that's been tough for people who aren't using the same system I'm using, because I use a Mac and Unix, and there's people on Windows and different versions. And I know they used to turn to each other in workshops and help each other out. And while there's people will speak up, maybe they're texting each other, you know, directly. It just, you can't see that someone's on Windows and turn to them and get help. So that was a real giant benefit that's kind of gone. Another one is that I do consulting hours, and I really try to emphasize that you don't need a big advanced question. You know, you can't figure out how to get the first line of code to run is a great topic for a 1 hour discussion with me. But I think a lot of people use that casual 5 minutes after a workshop where they don't really mind the 3 people who are gathering talking about hearing it, but they're maybe shy, I think, just to announce it in front of the 35 or 40 people in a workshop. So they don't do it. And then it's not that maybe we would have solved it in the moment, but I think sometimes they're just looking for a quick reassurance. Yeah, absolutely. Set up an hour. Let's talk about this. So I'm worried that I'm losing those. And then, it's similar. We don't have these, we used to have way more technical but casual community events, sometimes with pizza and so forth. And I think just it let people come in and feel just a little lighter about it all. And then they'd meet, me, and there's other people, there's librarians and statisticians, and they'd meet and they'd talk and they'd figure out who can help them. And then I think that would prompt people to maybe take a workshop or start doing stuff. And that's not happening. And then lastly, I'm glad that stuff fills up quickly, but now workshops are filling up in 24 hours rather than in a week. And people who can't get to their email, and this is at all levels of university, it could be because they're surgeons, or it could be because they work in some area where you're not sitting there looking at your computer. And I know it's got to be wildly frustrating to see that it's filled up the next day. You get your email and you check the next day. So we really need to do something about that. I feel that's really important. So there's my 4 on one side and the other. And I would love to, one of the reasons I really wanted to participate today is I would really love to hear how people are dealing with some of those issues that I've encountered.
All right, thanks. Before we go on to the next one, can I ask what your limit, how are you choosing how many people you can let into the workshop, of what that registration limit is that you're hitting? Is it based on how many people you can help or something else?
Yeah, it's most, especially in the beginning, I really try to emphasize to people that it's meant for people who haven't written any lines of code before. Sometimes I make a joke that once people have written their first line of code in Python, or maybe loaded their first line of code into a pandas data frame and can run it, I say, now you could leave. And I hope you stay, but this is what keeps people from learning to program a lot of the time. There's a lot of, we've got LinkedIn. I record stuff and put it online now. So they'd be able to do it. But that's why I'm willing to slow the workshop down. And sometimes there's a little frustration in the room, but I kind of feel, given it's meant for people who've never programmed before, if I get I don't want to get them all the time. If you get the occasional feedback that it went a little slow, I feel I'm probably pacing it properly. But once I'm over 35 people, and I don't necessarily have anyone else helping out, sometimes there are, I think the odds that it will bog down just get too high. So that's why I cap it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Radhika.
Hi, Christina. You said that perfectly this time. Hi, everyone. I haven't attended too many of these calls, so I'm probably not a familiar face to a lot of you. But my name is Radhika. I work at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health Bioinformatics Core. And the kind of training we do there, so I'm the training director there. I run the training program at the core. And the kind of training we do there is bioinformatics related. So we do a lot of sequencing-based sequencing application, DNA sequencing applications. But that's one component. The other component that we train on is basic data skills, which is kind of why I'm part of this network too. And we run workshops on introduction to shell. We also include in that shell introduction how to use a cluster environment. We run workshops on into basics of R, to the basics of Python. And our workshops are geared towards lab biologists. So biologists who have never seen a command line interface before. And so we train them up from scratch on how to do things independently using these basic data skills. And then we invite them to come for advanced workshops where we help them use the skills on an application. So we used to hold day-long or 2-day-long or 3-day-long workshops. We also have 3-hour-long workshops. And basically the 3-hour-long workshops have remained the same, but our full day long as well as the 2 or 3 day long workshops, we've had to reconsider. Nobody can sit in front of Zoom for even half that time. So we've made a few changes to make it so that it is actually the environment is actually something that the students can learn in and that we can teach in, right? So some of the things we have done are basically we've made it so that instead of a full day long workshop, we've split the workshop into 2.5-hour pieces, and we hold them over a period of, say, for example, it's a 1 day long workshop. It became 2.5 hours on Tuesday, 2.5 hours on Friday, and then 2.5 hours on next Tuesday. So instead of 1 day, we are now spanning it over 1.5 weeks. And what we do is we give them self-learning. So we give them assignments. So they have to go not just like do exercises, but actually learn content. So we'll teach them one thing. They have to learn 3 other things. And then when they come back, we review the things they learn, and then we teach them one new concept. Then again, we give them follow-up where they go and learn on their own. So we flipped the classroom in effect. And we have now, instead of all of that time being for teaching and in-class exercises, we actually have discussion sessions, Q&As. We've made it so that they can ask us questions at any point in time. And basically, to help with all of this, we don't use slides for our teaching. We use markdown format where everything is described, and it's just hands-on, right? So they have to understand what the code is doing, what each argument is doing, why we are using those arguments. So we actually we have descriptors, and we have GitHub, lessons on GitHub in markdown. And we give it to them. They can learn at their own pace, and they'll have it even after they're done with this workshop. So we have that already so that they can revise. So those are some of the things. The We also use Zoom to our advantage, where we make them use those little green check marks and the X's. I don't know if, I'm sure many of you are familiar with carpentry style teaching, where they use the green and red Post-its. So we've just basically said that the green check mark is a green Post-it, red X is the red Post-it. And we make them Post-it, we don't move forward until they're all ready to move forward. We make sure that they ask us questions in chat, but we make it so that they can't chat to each other during class. If they want to chat to each other, they can exchange information and do it after class, but we don't want that distraction during class. We also, I think Jeff talked about this as him being the only instructor. We have 3 instructors at any given time. So one person's teaching, one person has been designated to be a troubleshooter, and one person is the quote-unquote moderator. Means that they make sure that whoever's instructing gets access to all of the questions being asked in chat, and they make sure that any technical difficulties get dealt with. Also, they are basically the person who's teaching their backup in effect, so making sure nothing gets missed. And we found that all of this works, but I will kind of highlight that I totally agree with Jeff. The post-class interactions have reduced. They're non-existent. A couple of people stick around on Zoom afterwards and to chat to us, but it doesn't happen very much at all. And we in general have found that some people are okay with learning online, but some people the learning style doesn't work for them. And we've gotten in our exit surveys a few more neutrals than we usually get. So basically saying, oh, it was okay, the workshop is okay. Those are kind of my overall thoughts. And we've seen an increase in number of people wanting to take workshops as well. So we've gone up from teaching only 25 in person to teaching 40 to 45 on Zoom, which doesn't necessarily always work, but it works better if you have a moderator and a troubleshooter to help out. So thanks for your time.
All right, Jeff, number 2.
Yes. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Lentner. I work at Purdue University in the research computing group as a senior research data scientist. Sort of a long title, but I do all kinds of things. I wear a bunch of hats, but in this area, my group does some training and workshops, although all virtual now. I tried to organize my thoughts pretty well, but we'll see how it goes. Most of my comments are kind of a mix of what we've heard so far. So I'll just kind of explain what we used to do, and then what it is that we're doing now in this sort of virtual environment. So historically, in addition to direct support, we've offered a couple of different sort of proactive a couple of different ways that we touched users. So we did something called coffee hour consultations a couple of days a week. It used to be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but then we added Monday, where literally at the exact same time every day, there was a designated coffee shop around campus where we would set up, and a couple of us would be there. And we all have different domain expertise, different backgrounds, but covered a lot of different areas. And folks would just, no appointment necessary, just show up and ask us a question, start up a conversation, and they'd bring their laptop, and we could really sort of handle whatever it is that they were doing, give them advice, consult with them about the best way to do something, or solve whatever problem they were having. And that was incredibly successful, as has sort of been mentioned so far. When people are, when they feel casual about it, right? There's not so much pressure, and it's so much more informal, right? The pressure is off, and people will actually sort of bring up those really simple things that might be really simple, but also might not, might turn out to be something more fundamental. And then in addition to that, we had a portfolio of workshops that we would deliver on, you know, the usual things like Unix shell, version control, programming, mostly Python. And we did an all-day workshop on basically clusters 101, particularly catered to our systems. That would take people from absolute beginner to, if they attended all of these, to almost intermediate. And those were really successful, except for the challenge of we didn't have a predetermined point in the semester or the year when these would happen on a sort of predictable basis. We would just, there were these things that we would just schedule whenever seemed most convenient in the semester, and it was like a one-off kind of a thing. So before COVID, we were already kind of moving in this direction, and Jeffrey, number one, said something very similar to what I'm about to say, is we kind of had this vision that what we'd like to do is to take our workshops and break them down into self-contained modular bits about an hour or two long, and record them and put them all together into some kind of online content that people could go to. But you know, we kind of didn't get around to it for a while, but COVID kind of shoved us into it. So now, instead of doing in-person workshops, now at the same time we do the coffee hour consultations on Fridays. Every single Friday we do a 1.5, 2 hour segment, and we schedule out a particular thing that fits into the categories that we were doing before, like Unix. I did one on managing custom kernels with our Jupyter Hub, all sorts of things, and we record those. Our turnout has been about the same as it was for going virtual, although some of the same things that have already been said. We've noticed that the main thing that we're losing, at least for me, has been the interactivity. So you can get a lot more people in and exposed to the content in a virtual environment, but people are really reluctant to engage and be, you know, back and forth about a topic. I know for me, at least, whenever I taught workshops in person, I get a lot from reading the room and seeing how people are responding to what I've just said, and spending more time on something if I didn't think it was really well received, or if, you know, people are much more willing to speak up in person for some reason. And we almost never get spontaneous feedback during these online sessions. See, yeah, that's mostly where we're at. Again, our experience has been kind of similar to what we've already heard.
All right, thank you. I will go next as part of the panel. I'm Christina Maymon, lead research data services, basically data science and visualization at Northwestern University in the research computing group. As just said, also similar experiences. I'd say redoing. I'd gotten to the point where I was teaching, I like teaching a few slides and then stop and do an exercise, a few slides, stop and do an exercise for R, Python, SQL, some too, but I found that switching between slides and code was not working well online. So we've also sort of I ended up rewriting most of my materials into our Markdown documents or Jupyter notebooks. So just one screen, everything's there. Also working in that notebook format. So there's code and output right there. I also used to just do scripts and then console, but that's too hard on the Zoom screen to see as well. So I spent more time rewriting materials than I anticipated. One of the things we've done with online materials, I'd always been somewhat resistant to recording workshops where there are other good training materials already produced for them. So some of the very common R, Python, intro command line type of workshops, the things that aren't specific to our university or to our system. There's folks who have spent a lot of time developing good online materials for that. And so we spent time instead putting together some online learning guides that link to resources that would be free for our researchers. So somebody mentioned LinkedIn Learning, instead of just letting people loose on LinkedIn Learning, we said, here, why don't you try this, this course, this video. We have O'Reilly books online. Look at this specific one. Here's the ones that we are sort of curating and recommending. And then also linking to just other things some of you may have produced, some carpentries materials, other recorded videos and such that are online. For our HPC cluster, that team did, record sort of some new videos because it is specific to us. There isn't other material out there for it. I'll say one of the challenges we've had is with some of the more technologically challenging workshops. So for us, that would be Git and SQL, where people are just really unfamiliar with the environment they're working in. And there's both their local environment and a server that they're having to work with in some way. My colleague Colby is, I think, on the call here. She tried Git remotely, and that was rough. SQL I was going to do, I normally teach over the summer, and I kind of gave up. It seemed pretty, it's always been difficult in person to work out the technology. Usually I've been teaching in Postgres. I think there's some ways to do it with, there's actually some like JavaScript things that will run SQLite, I think, in people's browsers, but I didn't have all the material. So if anybody has a good remote SQL way to teach that remote, I would love to hear that, because it seemed like a lot of work to get that set up and compatible with the materials we had previously. I will stop there for now, though, and turn it over to Sarah for our last sort of intro comments, and then we'll open up for questions and other people. But Sarah first.
Hi, I'm Sarah Stevens. I'm a facilitator at the Data Science Hub here at UW-Madison. And we did I think we had about 12 mostly carpentries workshops that we taught in a year. And we're probably going to do a similar number this year. But since about May, we've transitioned all ours online. We had a few we had to cancel in the transition period, but we transitioned online in about May. And I think I've hosted or taught at maybe 20 half days of workshops at this point throughout the summer. And so as other folks have mentioned, we've switched the format. Instead of doing 2-day carpentry workshops, we split them up into half days at a time. And we'll do them about every other day. So you'll do like morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Monday, Wednesday the next week, maybe just Monday if it's a 4-day workshop. We also found that there's a need to go slower. I feel like it still fits our goals because our goals are to empower people to be able to do this on their own, not so much to teach them all of a specific tool. And so getting them excited and feeling like they can do it is, for me, the most important part. And we too also have virtual follow-ups. We used to have office hours and coding meetup every week in person. And now we've transitioned that to an online format where they come in Slack and they message in the Slack channel. It's kind of nice because also more people can participate that way. Actually, we've gotten a lot more engagement since we've done that. I think we'll keep the online component even if someday we meet in person again, when someday we meet in person again. And then we can meet with them on Zoom and follow up with them on that. And my favorite story from that is actually I taught Git online about 3 weeks ago. And the week after, someone came from the workshop to the office hours, and we implemented using Git on one of her projects. So it was a great kind of follow-up situation. We have also reduced the sizes of our workshops. We in person did about 35 to 40 learners, and now we do about 15 to 20. We still have helpers and Zoom facilitators and those folks too to help. Helping looks very different though in the online format than it does in person. You can obviously no longer sneak up behind someone and be like, oh, you have a typo right there. Instead, you have to get used to chatting with them in Zooms. And I found people really like to direct message the helpers. And so we have all the helpers rename themselves to have helper at the beginning of their name. So you can find them really easy in the participants panel. And then they get direct messages from learners who are not comfortable necessarily posting their question in the public chat and get answers. And you have to kind of train learners to give you all the information you need as well in chat, because I think sometimes they post, the worst case is just, I have a problem, something's not working for me. And best case, they usually post the error, but they won't post what they typed, which is usually where you can find that typo, which is, of course, 70% of the problems, I'd say, or more are typos. And so getting people used to that form of helping, and we make sure we introduce these different feedback mechanisms, talking to us in chat, using those nonverbal feedback in the participants panel in Zoom to give us feedback as well. And one of the cool things that actually happened at the last workshop, one of the number one, I'd say, instructor issues is lack of feedback from learners, right? You can't see anyone. It's like in this room where almost everyone has their video off. And so you don't get visual feedback from any of the learners. And you have to get used to asking for more feedback in the forms of those nonverbal feedbacks in chat. Sometimes I'll be like, hey, if you've downloaded the data, right? I've got the data in chat. And then they'll all like, I've got the data. And so you get used to people messaging in chat as part of it. But this not getting feedback, one really interesting thing that happened in a couple workshops ago was we had someone who's been to our workshops before and comes to office hours all the time, and he came to the session and he didn't like typing in chat. So he asked all his questions out loud, and it was great because other people did too. And so people started unmuting and asking their questions in the room. And I wish I could plant someone like that in every workshop, because it was really nice to get this like verbal talking going with the rest of the room. And so that was kind of an interesting observation from one of our previous workshops. Let's see, I'd say the number one learner issues are lack of screen real estate. And so we make sure we give them information on how to set up their screens ahead of time. So it's like, ideally, you have a big screen or two screens, and you can have Zoom on one side and the software you're teaching on the other, or the software you're using on the other. If not, maybe you get a second device and you have Zoom on your phone or your tablet or some other device, and you're working on your main computer. And if none of that works, prepare trying to get two things on your screen and switching back and forth between them so that you can see them. So we give them that warning in advance so that they have an idea of that. Let's see, what else did I put in my notes? Okay, one other interesting thing I'd like to share was we also did sort of a flipped classroom style where we mixed up synchronous and asynchronous learning. And I'm gonna post a blog post in the chat that is from that. What we did is we recorded the videos of the different materials in advance, and they were expected to watch, let's say, the first 4 episodes before session 1. And so we did a week where we did in-person sessions. So there was an hour every day for a week, and they got to choose whether they wanted to come in the morning or the afternoon. And during that hour, we kind of reviewed what they had seen in the videos, gave them a chance to ask questions, and we didn't spend a lot of time planning that. And so eventually we started also adding some extra exercises into that. And our next plan for that synchronous time is to develop a capstone project that they work on that's kind of practicing the skills they learned in the videos in the synchronous form. And we got excellent feedback. People really liked the synchronous, asynchronous mixed format there. We got one piece of feedback that really stuck with me after the workshop was someone who was like, I couldn't have sat in a 3-hour workshop because I have childcare responsibilities, but it was really great to watch the videos ahead of time and then get to interact with people and get my questions answered in the in-person feedback. So that was really great. I'm hesitant, although I'm really excited about recording videos. You can see I have my fancy mic and I like doing all those technical things. And I was really excited about doing videos, but I feel like one of the things we offer with the synchronous workshop is time in your calendar, right? I don't know about you, but for me, it's really hard for me to find random times to do things that are not in my calendar. So I keep telling myself I'm going to do this LinkedIn learning workshop and work through it on my own. And since it's not on my calendar, or I can overschedule that time that says learning block in my calendar, I do. And I think one of the things that we offer our learners through doing synchronous workshops is the time in their calendar to come hang out with us and learn these things. And so I still really like the synchronous format for that reason, at least. I still think we'll play with format a little bit because it's fun to do that. I'm actually thinking about trying this, at least with our local carpentries instructor group, trying out doing a kind of LinkedIn learning silent disco where everyone gets together and listens to the videos at the same time, and we can talk to each other and ask questions in the Zoom room. But everybody can sit alone and listen to things as need be too. But anyway, I'll be done now, and let me know if you have any questions about any of the things I've mentioned.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Just looking at, we have a couple questions in the call document, so I'll start with those, but please add questions to the chat or the call document. We're happy to ask you. And then if we're not actively asking a question, also feel free to unmute and ask as well. There is a question about if anybody has used tools that allow the instructors to view students' code while they're working on it. And this for the panelists or for anybody else here who might have experience with it. Has anybody used any of those tools where you can actually see what the participants are doing? No takers. Amy?
I'm going to answer this one. Yeah. So I'm not the instructor for the course I'm going to describe, but our this person who teaches R at our university, she set up something through our Ohio supercomputer using their online platform and Jupyter notebooks, so she could see what people were doing in the Jupyter notebooks. And I know people have referenced Jupyter notebooks here as well. And I think, sorry, that was for the Python workshops that they're doing, but she used the online platform through the Ohio supercomputer to view the code that people were working on. So it's a controlled environment, still like Jupyter notebooks, but still able to see what the students are doing. So that was something that was very helpful for her. We really struggled with the transition for R, particularly to online, because of trying to get people to set up their environments. And we had a lot of first-time learners that gave a lot of really negative feedback in the beginning. So moving into that controlled environment was very helpful for her.
Thanks. Anybody else try other tools, or not quite the same, but somebody's asking people to try LearnR, which is a package for making sort of guided tutorials or courses that people can work through. All right, I guess not. Somebody try it out and report back to us in the future. Like to hear. All right, another question about how much pre-workshop setup do you try and get done around technology? It says technology, access, connections, downloads. I'm guessing this is how much do you try and get the participants to be set up and take care of things before they join the workshop? How do you handle that? Getting people to download software or download materials? Do you do that and set instructions ahead of time? Do you have time for that in the workshops? I would say we very explicitly have been saying we are not going to help with package installation or installation issues during the video calls, that they have to message us afterwards or separately. But anybody else, how's everybody else handling that?
I can add something here. This is Radhika. We send them mandatory preparation instructions. We have gone to the extent for some advanced workshops to say, you need to send us your session info after loading all the packages. And if you do not send us your session info, we will not send you a Zoom link. So until you send us your session info, we are holding your Zoom link hostage. So this is just to force them to do it before class. And we are available by email to help them troubleshoot things. So we will help them. But But again, we give them like at least 5 working days before class to get this done.
I like the idea of holding the video link hostage. We had our experience is somewhat similar in getting participants to install the necessary dependencies and things like Anaconda or whatever it is that we're going to use. Quite often people don't actually do that. And then that's the thing, when we did in-person workshops, that was the thing that sort of obstructed moving forward in the workshop was, you know, some 20% of the participants not being prepared. In the virtual environment, we've kind of just made it explicit that we don't want to spend time on that sort of thing. We want to spend time on topic. But I like the idea of withholding the link.
I don't know if I could deal with all the angry people. Just as it is, if like somebody didn't miss it in their email inbox, I get very urgent emails about, I need the Zoom link. Where's the Zoom link? You haven't sent it. It's like, calm down. We will send it to you. It's coming. Are there other ideas for facilitating casual conversations and drop-ins besides using Slack?
Ooh, I've got something here. Our central IT group at University of Michigan developed this spiffy remote office hours queue tool. So let me bring it up real quick and I can show it to you. Cool. So this is the home page. So if you have like a TA or a facilitator or someone, you can look them up and you can see cues that they've made. So like this is one of my cues for one of the departments I have office hours for. You can, when it's open, you can join it and then you get a private blue jeans right now session for the student. So then the student gets in their blue jeans session and waits for the facilitator to come. The facilitator sees everyone in the queue. And if you have multiple people, you can decide who's going to answer them. So it's really cool. And they actually have a public version on GitHub. I'll have to look up the link to put in the follow-up email for this. But yeah, the code's publicly available. It's a super cool tool. And I think they're currently working on getting Zoom working. So if you wanted to help with that, they would appreciate it. Word of warning, you'll have to remove the Michigan branding and put your own in. They have not done that yet.
Still though, that's great. Yeah, one of the issues we've been trying virtual drop-in hours, but the logistics of it take a bit to figure out, and you have a room for people to join, send people to other rooms, how to make all of that work.
We've done something similar. It's not like a queue where you go in like this for a particular facilitator, but on the research computing website at Purdue, I said that we used to do these like in-person coffee hour consultation things where we'd all sit around a table at a coffee shop and people would just show up and we'd have like a sign. People would still ask, are you guys from research computing? But we have like a little calendar widget on our website and people can see open slots, and we have 2 or 3 parallel virtual rooms, and you can see if there's a slot available and you can like click in and then get partnered up.
That's good. I'd say on a personal level, using Calendly for scheduling consults with students has been great. It's been worth the subscription fee if anybody else is tired of back and forth scheduling lots of meetings. It's definitely been very worth it. Not really related to training, but helpful. All right. Other questions? Can unmute yourself and ask, or other things that folks that weren't on our panel but have tried, things that are working, things you have questions about.
This is Amy again from UC. I wondered, at your institutions, do you have a group that kind of gets together and talks about these things, or are you all trying to individually troubleshoot your problems? We've been trying to have one-off meetings, and it's been very helpful to talk with other colleagues. So I just wondered how people are problem sharing at their institutions.
I'll say for us, we always do a pre and post workshop meeting for every workshop. So that's a chance to make sure everything is set up right and troubleshooting issues that happened at the last workshop that we might want to do something differently next time. We've also had what I call instructor development meetings. Once a month, we meet as an instructor team, all the people who help with our workshops. And we've had a couple on talking about transitioning online and pieces of that.
We haven't really done that, but that's a fantastic idea. I think Julie Goldman might be on this call. She and I have been involved in setting up a Harvard-wide trainers group, which a lot of people are focusing on all of the things we are talking about come from research computing, and due to various reasons we haven't met, but I think just Amy's question is providing me with an impetus to meet, and we use Slack usually to connect with them, but we haven't had regular meetings for remote training. If we do and something comes up, we'll definitely kind of communicate with all of you about that.
Any other questions? Things people have tried that have not worked? Save the rest of us your pain.
I think one of the things that we were first tempted to do is try and use breakout rooms as side conversations for helping. That like you could at the same put a helper with someone in a breakout room while the session is going on, because that's kind of how it works in person. Some helper just sneaks up and helps, but then they fall behind and it's impossible to catch them up. And I was like, we're never doing breakout rooms during the main session unless it's like absolutely this person is going to leave right now if we don't. And usually I've found that if I can't help someone right now, since we take a break in our every hour, usually the next break is coming up within like 20 minutes or so, and I can be like, we'll meet at the break and I will help catch you up and fix any problems we have. And that's usually solved any times when I really wanted to do a breakout room.
Follow up to that, do you think this will work better now that Zoom has a feature where participants can choose breakout rooms themselves?
Maybe somewhat. I mean, the problem is still that the helper and the learner fall behind. I have seen people who have like the lesson streaming in a Twitch service so that the helper can see what's going on, so that they can catch someone up before sending them back. They've tried it. I don't have a lot of feedback on that solution yet. I do think the breakout rooms, choose your own, can definitely be useful in doing some different types of activities, maybe where each discussion group has a different topic and people can choose which topic they want. People love breakout rooms as exercises. I will say learners really do like those small groups. They'll turn on their video and actually talk to one another. And so if you can make exercises into an activity where they go breakout rooms, it's really great. But I always make sure it's longer than like 10 minutes because that time, they always have to talk to each other and do stuff. So if you don't have 10 minutes, it probably isn't enough time to get them in and out of breakout rooms. But everybody needs the latest one of the latest updates of Zoom to do the in and out of breakout rooms. So I know a lot of people tried that immediately after it happened, and users were like, I don't get that option. Why can't I switch? And it was because they didn't have the latest version of Zoom. So something to watch out for.
All right. Last chance for talks before we end for or questions or comments or anything before we end for the day. Go back to our stressful lives. Any announcements or things to share with the group that's unrelated maybe to the topic today, but things you want people to know about? Welcome to share here. You're also welcome to send things to the email list if there's things events you think would be relevant or resources that would be relevant to folks in the data facing network. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for participating, for our panelists for sharing, people for asking questions. And we're going to call it for today. Hope everyone has a peaceful November and holidays coming up. And hopefully we will see you at the calls in December. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.